you got to always be replacing yourself. We got to backfill ourselves as leaders, right? So let's talk to our podcast listeners about this, because I think it's a pretty common thing where we feel insecure about that. And you and I talk about this all the time. Like, what are the things that keep us from kind of going to the next level or training our people early enough to bring them up to the next role?
Yeah. I mean, I learned this the hard way. Can we just start out with a mistake? I learned it genuinely by mistake. Well, when I was moving from director of sales to VP, I was so busy trying to protect our salespeople and make sure that they had all the time on the phone. I mean, they're commission-based, that I didn't expose them to any of that stuff that the next level up would bring to them. Yeah. And so if I could go back, I would have started exposing them to some of those things in a non-fatal way. Getting to observe certain conversations, getting to make decisions around things while it's not really fatal. It's still the... It's
like the training wheels are still on, you're still there.
No one, their personal brand isn't impacted if something is kind of, a decision is made incorrectly, because I'm still in charge or responsible for that thing. So yes, I would say I learned that. We talk about it.
But don't you think that's where leaders, like, even if you understand the training wheels concept, like I know I do. I have this fear sometimes when I'm lengthening someone's rope or I'm giving them a test, if they get it wrong and it backfires, and then one of my leaders or someone else is going, oh, you let so-and-so run with that, then now it's all screwed up, and then it's really a failure on my part. Like, how do you give yourself permission to do that? Because you're kind of taking a risk when you do that, right?
Well, what's the alternative? You don't do it.
You're just stuck, right?
And it never, you, what was it Dave said the other day at staff meeting? If you don't backfill yourself, you never get that opportunity to move up, because who's going to take on those responsibilities?
Yeah, that's right.
So I think for me, what I have gotten comfortable with is knowing that there are going to be times where they make decisions that are not the way I would have done them. And sometimes they're just wrong, that they incur certain feedback from other people or they create a problem. And I believe that we have hired great people. And I believe that they make decisions based on caring. And when I know that that's their heart behind it and that they're not being sloppy, then I know that that's a learning lesson. There are going to be times, I just tell them up front, hey, there's going to be times that you're going to run too fast, and I'm going to sit down with you later and say, hey, let's talk about how I would have done that a little differently. Or what did you learn from that situation? And that's normal part of I prepare them that is normal. Because they're waiting. They're also very, they want to make you proud. And so they freak out the first time they do something wrong, and they go,
they feel like they're in trouble.
Yes, and they either don't want to tell you about it, so then they mask a problem and it gets worse, or they tell you, but it's too late, it's months later. You want to encourage them that this is normal. What I tell them, though, is in this process, in the beginning, we may not be exactly in line month 1, month 2, but really we should be coming closer in line. So by month 5, and I'm just making up a timeline, every position is different, but by that month we should be a lot more in lockstep. These areas where we differ in style and how we do things is probably getting a little less. Don't
you find there's just like this day where all of a sudden you're like, why am I making this decision? This other person, they totally got it. Like if it's done right, like you just look up, and a lot of times it doesn't even take till month 5. It's month 3 if they're a stud and they're really stepping up to the plate. Or if they're not, it's like month 7, they still hadn't got there yet, and we're realizing they're probably not the one to backfill or step up to the plate.
And you've got to ask yourself, have I slowed down enough and talked about the why behind things? We've talked about this a lot lately,
that's so huge.
Because
you were talking about coaching on the back end. What you're saying here is like get on the front of it and go, here's the principles. I did this the other day. A new leadership team came up under my direct leadership, and their previous leader had a very different personality style from me. I'm very high D. I like to move fast. And the other leader was a little bit more kind of in the trenches with them and more approval driven. And I told this leadership team, I said, look, here's my value. Actually, I wrote them down, and you helped me kind of look at the list. And you know me. I'm like, is this me? Is this right? And I took these guys to lunch. I said, these are my values. This is Daniel's personality style, leadership style. Here's what you need to know about me. It's kind of like a cheat sheet for your leader. And so I'm giving them permission to make mistakes inside of these values. I told them, one of their eyes got really big when I told them, I said, hey, anything less than $1,000 in expense, I don't want to hear about it. And they're like, are you serious? And I said, yeah. I mean, what are you going to just go blow a bunch of money. Right. You're an adult. You make good decisions. I trust you. Up to $1,000. I just want you to make a good decision. I don't want to see it. And everyone's got their number, and everyone has a track record on how much you would trust in terms of decision rights to lengthen that rope. But on the front end, I think about how many decisions I've freed up just by saying, I don't even want to know about it if it's this magnitude or smaller,
right.
you know, and you do that too, right?
Right. Well, and it's not just a dollar amount. Talk a little more about with decision rights. That is such an important idea, because it's not just about how much money someone can spend. It's also, here's your sandbox and here are the parameters.
Yeah, this decision right thing has really become a big buzzword inside our leadership culture here at Ramsey, because this summer we had this really great board executive offsite with Dr. Henry Cloud, who has been on this podcast, many of our listeners know. And Dave was talking about delegating more things to his board as he's continuing to get himself ready for the generational succession that we're having as a company. And we're identifying what are the areas that Dave still has to speak into or carry as the CEO. And we realized this framework that Cloud brought to us like completely changes the conversation. And it's these 4 categories of decision rights. And if we can agree on what kinds of decisions go into each category, we can move so much faster. And the first category is, I don't even need to know about it, just make the decision. The next one is, make the decision, but give me context on the back end so I'm not caught off guard or so I'm not surprised. The next one is, get it to 80% ready to make the decision, but I'd still like to speak into it to add some value or maybe just make a tweak because it's big or because it's new or because I'm just interested in that thing and I'd like to be involved. And then that 4th category is, hey, I'm the shot caller still. I don't trust the team to make the decision without me. It needs to be an approval, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we can get the things in that 4th category to move into the 3rd, and the 3rd to the 2nd, you're pushing decision-making to the front lines, but you're doing it through a framework where we all agree, these are the kinds of decisions we wait, these are the kinds of decisions we go, these are the kinds of decisions you don't even have to know. And It changes the whole conversation.
And as a team member or a leader, having that kind of safety net and knowing with specific clarity, okay, these are the things I'm freed up to. Just like that person said, oh, okay, so I'm freed up. If I have a decision, it's within $1,000, I mean, that gives them a clear sandbox. I have a team member who has started bringing his one-on-one formatted like that. And it's awesome because I can just quickly, we go through it and we talk about that and we talk about, all right, let's fast forward several weeks. What would it take, the things that are currently in your column 3 to move over to the column where we don't have to have as much discussion about that? So is it my confidence needs to increase? Is it your confidence needs to increase? What are the things that have to happen?
Yeah, that's huge. I would say, one thing I've noticed with you and I, we didn't have that written framework. And I was just thinking as you're saying that, like, why were we able to organically get there so quickly and naturally? And it could be that, you and I are both salespeople. We're both kind of I'm the ENFP on the Myers-Briggs, you're ENFJ. Our empathy, our intuition, our ability to just perceive someone else's kind of pet peeves and what they want to know is relatively high because we're used to using that intuition in a sales conversation or something like that with a prospect. So as leaders, we kind of just play jazz and really quick kind of figure it out and go, all right, I kind of know where Sarah's going to want to know about things before I make a decision. Same thing, vice versa. So I think as entrepreneurs listening to this, typically also a lot of, salespeople, don't assume your team necessarily knows.
Right.
Because you're going to have some leaders on your team, like Sarah with me, where I'm like, she just gets it. And then I go, why doesn't so-and-so just get it? That's another person. They may need more of this framework that you guys actually sit down and do a whiteboard exercise together. Frankly, it probably would have empowered us if we'd done it earlier. We've worked together for 5 years now and we can finish each other's sentences. But if that's not the case, I think getting that framework on a whiteboard and spending some time going through what are the things we need to do together, what are the things you can do on your own and tell me about later.
Right.
Because the whole goal, Sarah, is if we run faster and if I have to speak into less things, then you can do more as a leader and we operate at the speed of trust.
Right.
Trust is there that you're going to do those things without me, right?
Right. And you have a trust for how they're going to make those decisions that is in parallel to how you would have made those decisions versus wondering, okay, I asked them to check into that thing. Are they actually doing it or do I need to follow up? And it starts stealing your mind space.